Do not weep, maiden, for war is kind. Because your lover threw with wild hands toward the sky, and the affrighted steed ran on alone, do not weep, war is kind. Hoarse, booming drums of the regiment, little souls who thirst for fight, these men were born to drill and die. The unexplained glory flies above them. Great is the battle god, great, and his kingdom? A little field where 1,000 corpses lie. Do not weep, babe, for war is kind. Because your father tumbled in the yellow trenches, raged at his breast, gulped and died. Do not weep, war is kind. Swift, blazing flag of the regiment, eagle with crest of red and gold, these men were born to drill and die. Point for them the virtue of slaughter. Make plain to them the excellence of killing, and a field where 1,000 corpses lie. Mother, whose heart hung humble as a button on the bright, splendid shroud of your son, do not weep. War is kind. This is a little excerpt from Stephen Crane's poem, War is Kind. You might recognize Stephen Crane, the name. He's the author of Red Badge of Courage, which is a book that many of us read during high school or junior high at some point. Stephen Crane was himself a soldier, and we can see in his poem, War is Kind, that being a soldier did not sit well with Stephen Crane. So this poem is an excellent example of the use of irony to express a point. Irony is the expression of one's meaning by using language that normally signifies the opposite, typically for a humorous effect, but not in the case of Stephen Crane. We can see that he was using it for the effect of helping the reader empathize with his experience. So just the beauty of the contrast of some of the language, the reason it works so well is the beauty of the contrast of some of the language we're used to hearing glorifying war is strewn in through this poem. But that phrase that refrains through the poem and is the title of the poem, War is Kind, that's something we're not expecting to hear. And that particular adjective alongside of the word war is really jarring and sort of then actually helps put in perspective how jarring some of the other language we use alongside of war is. For example, the excellence of slaughter, the virtue of killing. Stephen Crane takes these words that we sometimes hear alongside of words about war, excellence, virtue, but then puts them up against pieces of war that we would never call excellent. And certainly with that refrain of war being kind, it's all the more startling. So this is a lovely use of verbal irony, but there are 3 types of irony. All of them can be used in poetry. There's verbal, which is the use of words to express the opposite of what is meant. There's situational, which is an irony of events. And there's dramatic, which is an irony in which the audience knows something that the character does not. So I'll give you examples of this from Romeo and Juliet, but again, it could be used in poetry also. So situational irony in Romeo and Juliet. Juliet says when she first meets Romeo, if he be married, my grave is like to be my wedding bed. The irony in this rests in the fact that the outcome is the opposite of what Juliet expects. Marrying Romeo is what leads her to her deathbed. Then dramatic irony can also be seen in this play when Juliet takes the poison to appear dead and Romeo shows up and thinks she is dead. The audience knows better, but we can't tell Romeo. Well, we could try. I saw a little girl try in a play once and it was adorable. But we also then know as Romeo kills himself that Juliet is going to wake up and find him dead. And it's all very dramatically ironic for us, the audience. So themes to consider when writing in irony are a point of view that's hard to get across in a straightforward way. So something that you're finding hard to deliver in a way that is clear and sort of directly to the point might be something to consider irony. Something people normally see in black and white, but usually differ about. This is great because there are a lot of things that if they are black and white, then the way that they're seen right or wrong is exactly opposite on the other sides of the issue. So using irony to juxtapose and to use that sort of other side as a way to reveal what you're actually trying to say is amazing. That's exactly what Stephen Crane does in War is Kind, as he points out to those who would glorify war that it is not something glorious. There are a lot of aspects of war that are hard and heavy and hurtful. So that works really well. The other thing you could do is something lighthearted, of course, because we can use irony to be funny. So that I have an example from that, from an Ogden Nash poem. Ogden Nash was my dad's favorite poet. He writes a lot of silly, fun poems. And this one, called To My Valentine, is a lovely bit of irony. So, to my Valentine, more than a catbird hates a cat, or a criminal hates a clue, or the Axis hates the United States. That's how much I love you. I love you more than a duck can swim, and more than a grapefruit squirts. I love you more than gin rummy is a bore, and more than a toothache hurts. As a shipwrecked sailor hates the sea, as a juggler hates a shove, as a hostess detests unexpected guests. That's how much I love you. I love you more than a wasp can sting, and more than a subway jerks. I love you as much as a beggar needs a crutch, and more than a hangnail irks. I swear to you by the stars above and below, if such there be, as the high court loathes perjurious oaths, that's how you're loved by me. So this is a lovely little poem by Ogden Nash, another way to use irony in poetry. So I'll be along in just a couple of days with a quick exercise to get you writing ironic poetry in no time. Thanks for joining me.